Thanks so much. Good morning. I'm Ramu Damodaran. I'm with the delegation of the University for Peace to the United Nations. I'm delighted to be here with Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, the permanent representative of India to the United Nations, and Sister Jayanti, who's head of the Brahma Kumaris office and delegation to the United Nations in Geneva. It's entirely apposite that we're meeting today at the invitation of the Brahma Kumaris at the Baha'i Center, because if you look back at the heritage of these two great organizations, you'll find that the Brahma Kumaris spoke right at the beginning of a collective consciousness for peace, while the Baha'is spoke about a unified world vision. And why I stress both is the idea of unity, of coming together, of a collectiveness, if you will, which is really so relevant to the topic that we're addressing today. The topic actually stems from a major event which will be hosted by India in September this year, the annual summit of the G20 countries. And it's been done with a great deal of preparation and a great deal of popular involvement. In fact, in the phrase of the Indian Prime Minister, it's what we call a Jan Andolan, a people's movement to take this forward. And the theme of the G20 this year is One World Family, which again resonates to the two themes that I mentioned from the Brahma Kumaris and the Baha'is. So we'll have a conversation with Ambassador Kamboj and Sister Jayanti. And I'm just going to pose a few questions because we're really blessed to have such an intimate group, if you will, and all of us can take part in the conversation and pose our own ideas or questions as they come up. I'd like to begin by turning to Ambassador Kamboj and this idea of one world family, which has enormous spiritual rootings in India, philosophically. And I wonder if you could reflect upon that and also talk about how that idea, which has been inherent in our tradition, manifests itself in the India of today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ramu, and good morning to everybody. Needless to say, I'm so delighted to be here and I feel deeply honored, and please accept my grateful thanks for inviting me on this very special occasion. I think Ramu is absolutely right. India is a civilizational power, as all of you know, with a very distinct value system. And the concept of one world family is right at its very core. And I think nowhere is it more manifest than in India's G20 presidency, what Ramu just referred to, where the slogan indeed is one earth, one family, one future. But what I would like to say here, the second part of the question, that this is not just an empty slogan. In fact, India has been walking the talk, and I can give you numerous instances, but I will not bore you. Time is always of the essence, but draw your attention to 2-3 recent examples where India has indeed walked the talk, confident in the belief, committed to the fact that the world is one large family. For example, take the case of the COVID pandemic. I know a lot has been said, but I think it bears reiteration that at that time of such distress, global despondency, a country such as India, which had its own problems, yet it found the space to share vaccines, over 240 million doses to over 100 countries. And mind you, none of this was monetized. Most of these vaccines were grants. And I'm so happy to tell you, and I feel so proud as the representative of India, many countries, whether they are from the Pacifics or whether they are from the Caribbean or whether they are from the African countries, come and tell us. And it's also been stated in a public domain that we got our first vaccines from India. So I would say, and what is this? If this is not a large-heartedness or altruism, so to speak, of the highest kind. Another example, let me give this to you. The most recent, very unfortunate earthquake in Turkey, or Turkey, pardon me. Within 24 hours, India was one of the first countries to be right there with field hospitals, with medical support equipment, with medical relief. under the tag name of Operation Dost, or Friend. Similarly, there have been numerous instances. There's been the earthquake in Nepal in 2015, where within 6 hours, Indian teams landed in Nepal. Or it's not just in our immediate neighborhood. You might say it's just, Sri Lanka, or it is Nepal, or it is Afghanistan. But also there were floods in Mozambique, and India was among the first countries to effectively respond immediately. And so on and so forth. I can give you many, many instances. And just one final point, Ramu, if I may say so, that when India extends this assistance, she does not attach any conditionalities. She doesn't make it dependent on something. This assistance is given purely in the spirit, in the belief that the world is one large interconnected family, keeping a human-centric global development approach in mind, as opposed to a self-centered model. And I think this is what our Prime Minister, I think we should be very grateful to him. It is not that we did not know that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the whole world is one family, is part of the Indian ethos, but he has sort of made it a rallying cry. A rallying cry, and the, I think, entire nation is now firmly committed to this principle of one humanity, so to speak. And I think I will round this off by saying that India stands forever for humanity, and it is also the domestic slogan of the Government of India, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, that is together for everyone's growth and progress. And I think this is what sets India apart. Some humanity, kindness, compassion. After all, we are the land of Lord Buddha, we are the land of Mahatma Gandhi. And I think this very distinct value system is part of the ancient civilizational ethos of India. And I think we see it very much manifest today. No empty sloganeering, but actually walking the talk.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. And particularly for making the point about distant members of the family, not just the immediate family as we often think about, but going to extensions of the family which might not be immediate, but which are in need. And that brings me to my question to Sister Jayanti. You've been active in Geneva, working with a number of stakeholders, including non-governmental organizations, including the UN offices. And I imagine this is also very much a part of their response to the world of today, not being limited by immediacy or geography. How do you see this idea of a single human family manifest itself among people whom you deal with in Geneva?
Thank you for your question. And yes, it's my privilege to be here with you. So thank you for being with us. Spirituality from all continents, and spirituality isn't restricted to one place, but it's part of the world family. So all spiritual people would say that the world is one family as a reality. And so we would come together on all levels, just being able to connect with each other, work with each other. You represent the University of Peace. And when Secretary General Robert Mueller had come to our old headquarters in Mount Abu in India many years ago, he had said, well, I'm actually seeing a living University of Peace here, because he saw people of all nationalities, all religious traditions come together literally as one family. So it's something that's quite noticeable. And the responses of people that we work with, whether it's in Geneva or any other place, is always that because there's a spiritual bond that connects us, it enables us to rise beyond the physical persona. So color, race, ethnicity, all of these things become secondary, because you're connecting not just with a human being, but in particular, Denise, I'm looking at you especially because you understand where I'm coming from. So thank you for being my model. So we connect with the being, the light that's shining within. And when there's that connection, then really it is one family. And I believe absolutely that any of the issues that face humanity today can only be overcome when we take this up as a reality in our lives, that we are working with one family. Then the idea of one home, one planet, and also one future becomes absolutely the reality. And so, yes, it's something that we believe absolutely and we work with. I personally work with people of many different colors and many different religious traditions. And we find that we connect on the level of spiritual values, because love, respect, dignity, honesty, all of these things are things that no one tradition will say, this is mine, but we will say these are spiritual values that belong to all of us. And so when we meet together as beings of light, then we see each other with that dignity and respect. And so I truly see that that is the future of the world, that we have to come to this awareness of spirit rather than just human.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti, and thank you for that reference to the light within, because as many of you may have observed in the initial slide, this program is also being done as part of an initiative called the C20, which is the civil society track of the politically led G20. And this has been very active for the last several months. The C20 process in India is led by Mata Amritanandamai, whom you might know as Amma, who has visited New York and I dare say many of these cities in which you have been on a number of occasions. And why I was struck by your reference, Sister, to the light within, is that when C20 started, the original idea for the theme of C20 was be the light. And Amma said, we have no right to say this. You can't be peremptory and order people to be the light. You have to assume they are the light. So the slogan now is, you are the light. So in other words, there's no question of asking people to take on a persona that they don't already possess, but recognize the light within which each one of us has. I'd like from that point of view, and your reference, Sister, to the many stakeholders involved and their unifying presence, and also, Ambassador, what you mentioned about the idea of dosti, if you will, of friendship, which cannot be computed in monetary terms. And to enlarge the question, if I may, to the United Nations as a whole. Now, when we began, the emphasis was really on the word united. And I think amongst a number of people, there is still a sense of despondency that on many aspects, the United Nations remains ununited. And I wonder if you could reflect, is it important to have that unity and, in a sense, conformity, or should we allow and encourage the expression of individual belief and conscience on the part of nation states and the global population as a whole?
Well, thank you so much, Ramu. I honestly think this is a complex question. It doesn't have easy answers, and I think we can approach this question from different angles, different perspectives, so to speak. That being said, I do not feel that conscience over conformity is necessarily a binary question, either or. And I personally believe that many countries have a way of finding a balance between the two according to their culture and value system. But having said that, as far as India is concerned, I think what I can say is that in the international domain, as far as India is concerned, and based on our recent experiences in the Security Council, India is a country that has always stood for multilateralism, international law, fairness, justice, equity, peace, harmony, consultation. And this is manifest in all that it has done and it will continue to do. Yes, there are times when people may not agree with us. And yes, there are times when we may have stood alone. But that is only because we cannot let go of those principles to which we genuinely believe in. And those principles I've listed out. It is peace, harmony, progress, development, prosperity, dialogue, consultation, international law, principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty in a political sense. And I think this is what had been said by the Prime Minister of India when we first entered the Security Council. He had made it very explicit that as India enters the Council, we will go by the 5 S's. So what are the 5 S's? I will read those out very quickly. Samman, Samvad, Sahyog, Shanti and Samriddhi. So let me explain that very quickly. Samman is respect. Samvad is dialogue. Sahyog is cooperation, the concept of looking upon the world as one family. Shanti is peace, the land of Lord Buddha, the land of Mahatma Gandhi. And Samriddhi is prosperity. Prosperity for one and all. Actually, this is the famous India way. When we talk about the India way, this is the India way, the 5 S's. And I do believe that in our foreign policy, we manifest that on a day-to-day basis, sometimes in navigating our way across these complex issues. But I think either way, whichever way you look at it, we have earned our spurs, we have earned the respect of the international community, even if I'm saying so myself.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that. I'd like to bring in another S, if you will, and that is self-transformation. And ask you, sister, the Brahma Kumaris have often talked about, very eloquently, about the self-transformation of individuals. From your experience working with the United Nations and in Geneva, do you think it's possible to have a self-transformation of organizations as well?
Self-transformation by its very term begins with the self. And then the question of transformation on a larger level, I think it depends very much on the leader of an organization. And so, yes, I have seen that where there is one leader who is able to go through the process of transformation themselves, and I also want to define one specific aspect of transformation, and that is where I know that the human being has a combination of things that are beautiful, but also things that are not so beautiful. For me, transformation then means that you're able to transform the negative into the pure and positive. Because I believe that the being that we are is actually, when it begins its journey, it's completely pure and wholesome and very beautiful. It's filled with truth. And then through our journey, we tend to accumulate dust and debris along the way. And so the process of self-transformation is to remove that and come back to that original state of being. And so I see how I can speak for our own organization. The founder was man, Brahma Baba, and when he passed on, by constitution now, all our leaders are women. We have brothers, and so we have men very much as part of our organization, but it's always women who head the organization. And there are good reasons for that also. But what I found was that Dadi Prakash Muni, who visited the UN several times, and then after her Dadi Jayanti, who came many, many times here, their qualities of integrity and honesty and commitment and peace and respect for all, making themselves available for all of these qualities plus a lot more that I haven't listed, but they embodied these qualities, and I'm sure that there are many around this room who did meet them and can validate what I'm saying. And so because that one leader represented the organization and embodied these qualities, that set the culture of the whole organization, and that continues till today. So I know for a fact that organizations where they have leadership that has those qualities, definitely that process of transformation becomes an example for everyone. You see, human beings, they abstract is wonderful, but it's only when you see somebody in reality and they demonstrate something, they become a role model, then you'll say that yes, this works, and I as a human being can do the same. And so I think that definitely organizations can also follow in that way.
If I may take up from that point of self-transformation and ask you, Ambassador, you mentioned Gandhiji. And in many senses, the spirit of Mahatma Gandhi was responsible for the initial transformation of the UN from being really a security mechanism to prevent war into a much larger organization which worked for the dignity and worth of the human person. And you, in your distinguished career, have served as India's High Commissioner to South Africa. And I wonder if you could reflect upon Nelson Mandela personally and about the entire saga, if you will, of the anti-apartheid struggle in which India played such a leading role, and the United Nations finally stood vindicated, even though in the beginning there was far less conformity to an ideal than consensus.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Ramu. Thank you for the question. And if you ask me, why did that happen? Why did the United Nations stand vindicated? Because I'm a firm believer in goodness and a firm believer in right, in goodness, triumphing over what is not right. And I think events play out in a way that while they may not seem fair in the short run, but in the medium term and longer term, I think things play out the fair way, the right way. And therefore, turning it around now to India, my own country, and the very distinct value system that I spoke of, you will see that India always will espouse what is right, what is correct, what is fair, what is just, and what is good for humanity. And that is why this whole concept of one world family, what Sister Jayanti also mentioned, that irrespective of color, creed, caste, sex, we are human beings first and foremost. And there must be a humanity that connects us. And we must reach out and extend the helping hand. And eventually what happened in South Africa, and I had the privilege of serving there as High Commissioner, indeed, theirs was a very painful past, extremely. And I would say that even today, those memories remain. They may be beneath the surface, and they haven't left the mindset of the people there forever. And I guess it was a matter of time before the country gained independence, gained its freedom. And today, of course, it is a powerhouse in Africa. The good thing is that there is a little Indian touch in South Africa. Mahatma Gandhi lived in South Africa for 21 years. But what is most notable, he developed this powerful and unique instrument called Satyagraha in South Africa. That cold, wintry night, when he was offloaded a first-class carriage in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa, that night he had two choices when he was pushed out. As you all know, he was carrying a first-class ticket, but because of the system of apartheid and racism, he was thrown out very unceremoniously. And as he lay on that platform, completely humiliated, and he trudged his way to the waiting room, he had two choices: to leave and to accept the injustice, or to stay back and fight. And as you all know, as history knows, he chose the latter. And in those 21 years, he worked tirelessly, ceaselessly, and developed the powerful instrument called Satyagraha, or peaceful non-violence. The stress is on peace. And then went back to his own country and led a country that was under colonial shackles to freedom without any violence whatsoever. So I think that was a beautiful question, beautiful segue, Ramu. Thank you so much. But it only serves for me to highlight to all of you where my country comes from. A country that believes in peace, a country that believes in fairness, justice, equity, progress and prosperity, and one humanity.
Thank you, and thank you for using that very rarely heard word, goodness. You know, we tend to talk about it in many synonyms, but you, I think, really articulated so beautifully when you use that word. And I'd like to bring that message, if you will, of India, Sister Jayanti, to ask you, tell us about Mount Abu and tell us why India became the home and remains the home of the Brahma Kumaris.
It's a very beautiful question, and it might take me a long time to answer your question. I feel that India has a very, very long tradition of civilization. And we would say that it's the land of the Adi Sanatan Devi Devta Dharma, a land where divinity was a way of life. So the Devta Dharma, and Dharma is not just religion, but it's also a way of life, a way of being, and a natural state of being. And so where you have a land that cherishes a heritage that says that the ancients of that land had those divine qualities, and today you see that it's just simply a memorial rather than in practical life, but there's the aspiration and a hope that we can become that once again. And so we actually stayed behind in Pakistan for another 3 years after partition. The guidance that the founder received was that that would be the right thing to do. And so then we moved to India, to Mount Abu, in 1950. And so there'd been a period of 13 years of intense meditation. And then we came to India, and again there was 1 year in which there was again intense meditation. And there was a Swami called Gangeshwaranand, and some of you might have heard of him, a very, very elevated being who actually was blind from the age of 4, but then wrote the scriptures, and he pointed us in the direction of Abu. And so we arrived there, and we've been there ever since. And so I feel that India is that sacred land that has an ancient tradition in which there is spirituality at the core of its civilization. And this idea of one family, one world, that's been around for 5,000 years since civilization started. We would date it in that way. There might be different arithmetic here for other people, but right from the start of civilization. And so this is why being in Abu, in that ancient land, at that time when we moved there, it was a very, very simple tribal area. Now it's become more of a holiday tourist spot because it has very, very famous temples there. And mountains have always represented a place of elevated consciousness. The physical represents the inner awareness. And so coming into the mountains, also being surrounded by very famous temples. There's the Bilwara temple, which I think is perhaps one of the best pieces of marble architecture that I have ever seen. And it has not just classic marble lines of that simplicity, but a whole pillar from here to the top, for example, one pillar, and it has intricate carvings on every single image, every single inch of it. And it also shows people seated in meditation. And so very, very symbolic and representative of what we need to do to achieve a higher state of being. And another interesting thing about these marble images is that they depict what's shown as the third eye here. And those who haven't been to Abu, you're very warmly invited, especially Ramu and, of course, our ambassador. Some of you may have been there, but if you haven't, it's definitely worth putting it on your next itinerary for India. And that third eye actually represents the period of time I believe that we're going through now. Because I think that for a long time, humanity has been just caught up with materialism and commercialism. And now we're seeing the impact of that in terms of the environment, in terms of the big injustice of the haves and have-nots. All of these things reflect the materialistic consciousness we've had and the consumerism that we've been caught up with. And this image to me represents the awakening, the opening of the third eye, not a surgical operation by any means, but the awakening of the spirit. And the third eye, of course, is here, where they've shown, which is actually the location of the human spirit. So I believe that not only is India a very sacred land where there are memorials to not just Hindu gods and goddesses, but also to Jains, to Sikhs and Christians, and also, of course, all the different traditions that exist. Islam is represented, as you know, very highly. So India has been the cradle of many, many traditions, the home, the birth, as you mentioned, Mahatma Gandhi, but also Mahavir, Sri Buddha, many other traditions too. So I see that we are in the right place, and Mount Abu, out of all the places in India, I believe Mount Abu is one of the most sacred pilgrimage places also. And so it's our home, and it served us very well, and we are still there, and we hope to continue there also.
Thank you. You mentioned this idea of a higher state of being. And that brought to mind two remarkable events which the Permanent Mission of India under your leadership had organized, Ambassador. One, of course, on Gandhi Jayanti last year, and one this February, with the central theme, if you will, of human flourishing, of the idea that we can't just be content with attaining the attainable, but must go beyond that. And I dare say that your work as our ambassador to UNESCO offered its own insights into that. Could you reflect upon that in the context of the one family idea, about how it would give each human being a chance to truly flourish, specifically in the sense of how attainment is both personal, so flourishing for the sake of the individual success, but in the process that flourishing brings a measure of joy and fulfillment to others within the family?
Absolutely. I think that is very, very true. And I think for any change to happen in today's world, change has to happen at the atomic level for the entire mass to change. And I think this is very manifest in what actually Mahatma Gandhi had said. And I will quote him again when he says, "Be the change that you wish to see in others, or be the change that you wish to see in the world." I think what he's saying simply is that change has to happen first at the individual level for it to have an impact within the family and the larger globe as well. So the Prime Minister of India launched a new concept last year, and I was very fortunate to be there on that occasion. This was in Gujarat. The Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, was also there when he launched Mission Life. Mission Life is basically a new lifestyle for the environment, where the Prime Minister has stressed that, enough of all of this. I mean, there's so much wastage, there is so much mindless utilization, and it has impacted the environment, as Sister Jayanti herself has mentioned. We have to do something. We have to bring about changes in our individual selves, in our individual behaviors, for this to impact positively in the environment. And this change must start with the unit, at the atomic level, as I said, for the entire mass to change. So I was there when Mission Life was launched, and the whole idea is to create a critical mass, a corpus of pro-planet people who work together unitedly for a cleaner, bluer, and greener planet. And in a generic sense, I do believe that change cannot happen if it's only top-down. It has to be a bottoms-up. It has to involve each and every person in a unit for it to be meaningful and impactful.
If I could take off from that and ask you, Sister Jayanti, the idea of an individual's, well, not just responsibility, but ability to change not only her life, but the life of those around her, the project Life that the Prime Minister of India launched last October, right? Is that something that you can relate to, the power of the individual to make that change?
Absolutely. Everything begins with one. And we've seen that within our own organization. One person has a vision of a better world and understands that it's through spiritual education that there can be a better world. And others have followed in that way, understanding those principles and working with them. What happens today is that because we've forgotten our own spiritual identity and that dignity that we carry within ourselves, we become a little bit hopeless and helpless And so we feel that, what can I do? What difference can I make? And yet, of course, one individual can have an impact on a minimum level of 125. And this was an experiment that was done at Harvard some years ago, and I heard about it. And it's been written about also. But when an individual sees another one perform an act of goodness, at least 5 people are impacted, and the 5 have an impact on another 5, each one of them. So keep multiplying 3 times, and it comes to 125. So that gives us great hope for the future that, yes, one candle that's lit can at least light 5 other candles, if not 100 other candles. So we believe very deeply and sincerely that one individual transformation is going to impact many others, and you reach a certain level of critical mass. And once you've reached critical mass, the majority begins to understand these ideas and follow in the same way. So I think that the light that's entering the world at the present time, the consciousness of holistic living, the understanding of our codependency as human beings on each other, working together for the environment, working together in so many different ways. I think that all the problems that we face as a human family, all of those can be eliminated and dealt with through the awareness of this inner light. And as we begin to understand and experience and then experiment with it, I think that each one of us has a huge impact on others around us, and there can be a transformation of the world. I hold a vision of hope that we're going through a period of darkness which is coming to its end, and what lies ahead of humanity is definitely a world of light, a better world for all.
Ramu, can I say that I fully agree with Sister Jayanti, because as they say, in every atom lies the seeds of transformation.
Thank you for that. And I must say that looking at the eyes in this room, I think both you, Ambassador, and you, Sister Jayanti, have lit many candles here this morning. And I'd like now to open this up to a broader conversation, dialogue. Please do share any thoughts you have, any questions you have. If you could introduce yourself before you do so, we'd be grateful, but the floor is yours.
Good morning. It's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for this dialogue. I'm Kusumita Peterson. I'm on the board of the Parliament of the World's Religions. We'll have a major convening in Chicago in August. I'm also the chair of the Interfaith Center of New York. And the Secretary General of the United Nations has proposed in his report, Our Common Agenda, that the Trusteeship Council of the United Nations be repurposed as a forum for deliberation on the rights and well-being of future generations, and also for the management of the global commons. And this need not interfere with any remaining tasks that the Trusteeship Council has, from its original mission. And my question comes back to the concept, the ideal of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. What would you say about wording or reflection extending the concept of the oneness of the human family to the future? In other words, the vision and the ethics looking into the future, including the future generations.
No, thank you very much. May I go ahead? Thank you very much for that question. And indeed, at the United Nations, we are discussing our common agenda. And there are various policy briefs that are coming out of it. Some of it has yet to be discussed amongst member states. But I personally think it's a great idea. As a country that has sort of invented, if I may use the word, the philosophy of the whole world being one large interconnected family, I certainly think if there was more humanity in the world, this world would be so much a better place. So I do not see why it cannot be done, if we truly are to be a United Nations.
Thank you. Any thoughts, sister?
Thank you. I've been meeting you over the years at various interfaith conferences, so I appreciate that you've taken the time to come here today. And yes, definitely, whatever we do today has to be with the awareness of future generations. And so I think that we're planting those seeds that I believe will then be continuing for the future also. Because when there's great darkness and you move to a transition in which then there's light, then that light is definitely going to be carried by the future generations also. So I think that it's very much part of our agenda.
So oneness includes the future.
Certainly.
Certainly. Agree.
Sir.
Hi, namaste and good morning to everyone. My name is Amit Guha. I'm from Queens and she's my wife, Smita. She'll be singing today. My question is to the sister, you had mentioned the light is all within, you are the light. So in Vedas, our ancient scriptures, there are 4 Mahavakyas, and one of them is Tat Tvam Asi. So whoever is over there is manifested within you, and all are here. So through our human services, we are serving the Supreme, because the Supreme is within you, and you are the light. From my personal experience, I could see the COVID was a disaster. At the same time, it brought us together. From our, again, saying about our personal experience, during that time, from March 31st, 2020 to July 24th, 2020, for continuous 100 days, me, my wife, my children, and a couple of our friends, we served for continuous 100 days, feeding 10,000 people or more free to the brave hearts who were offering their services to the patients for the sake of humanity. We didn't look for the results. We looked for the action. We are all karma yogis, all within. Through our action, it is the blessing of the Supreme that we could do it. And the premises that you have built upon your ideology in serving the humanity is not only the humanity, you're serving the divinity within. So we very much appreciate what you do, and we feel that within. And as I mentioned in the Vedas, other Mahavakyas is Aham Brahmasmi, Pragyanan Brahma. Pragyanan means, Pragya means whether you are sad or whether you are happy, you keep your focus for the humanity and for the sake of it.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. Any thoughts?
No, I fully agree with you. There is nothing to disagree. You have said it so beautifully that, divinity is within. And I would say goodness is a religion.
It's so much joyful. Just even well joy, very hard to express because you feel the joy within. So when you share that radiates from one person to the other. So we are all in one.
That is
from that perspective.
So beautiful. If only we had more people like you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that this idea that you shared is, of course, something that comes from the tradition of Bharat, but also within the Abrahamic religions, there is this idea that we were all created in the image of God. And so that idea, again, is a very universal concept. And so if I have been created in the image of God, do my actions reflect whose child I am? And so, yes, it's a very beautiful reminder of who we are in terms of the eternal spirit. and what it is we need to do to support each other as a human family under the fatherhood and motherhood of the divine. So yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, for convening this conversation. And if I may start just by endorsing, I think, the exchange that we just heard, the cardinal significance of anchoring the shared values in the divine. I share that, and I think it's important to highlight it because the shared values, the spiritual, the moral values that we are highlighting are not values that come from our own volition. To be consistent, to sustain them, they have to be anchored in the supreme divine. And I believe this is it's manifest in at least the major religions as well. So I think it's important. For example, I'm from Christian faith, and there we talk about the fruit of the Spirit, and which are it's love, joy, peace, patience. Is then the goodness comes, self-control, faithfulness, and all those. So it's extremely important, at least from my perspective, that when we discuss this, it's not we cannot escape invoking the inner values in us, in each one of us, but which are anchored, connected with the supreme divine. Now, if I may also make, with reference to India, I come from Zambia. Previously, I used to be a foreign service officer for 31 years, and also had the privilege of serving as ambassador to the United Nations and European Union, and also, of course, international organizations, including UNESCO as well. I was there, and growing up, after graduate school, I joined the civil service, the foreign service, the diplomatic service, and I was a witness to the important role that the Indian people played in the liberation struggle, for instance. And I was together with our founding president, who just recently passed on, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, and we knew firsthand just how the Indian people manifested, or demonstrated the faith in action. They were with us. When I say us, it reminds me of our African Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are, which is hundreds of thousands of years. And there again, all the values that we have evolved, love, joy, peace, etc., call responsibility and transcending the artificial boundaries of ethnicity, race, religion, etc. Very, very evident. So I would say, and again, for instance, citing our personal experience of Zambia, when Nelson Mandela was incarcerated, 1964, and Zambia became independent a few months later. Zambia hosted the African National Congress and the liberation movements in Southern Africa for 30 years until after Nelson Mandela was incarcerated. Why? Our founding fathers and sisters always reminded us we are one. And so long as other people remain under colonial and white racist regime, our independence and freedom and human rights are in jeopardy. So that, I believe those values, again, those are values you find very much reflected in our faiths, etc., are extremely important. And I would like to end on a very optimistic note that I believe after conflict, and especially right now we have a series of pandemics, and during these pandemics, and I'm glad that Secretary General has always been invoking togetherness, us acting together. And I believe that I'm more hopeful that what follows is going to be a one world family. I believe that. And part of my belief rests in what has happened for all of us as students of history. The birth of the United Nations, 1945. This organization, a vital, indispensable organization, was born out of the ashes of conflict. So I'm very hopeful. I think I get for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mary, please, and then we'll go to you, please.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Trishala Prasad, and I'm from the Permanent Mission of Guyana to the UN, and I'm pleased to be here. I just want to start by commending Ambassador Sister Jayanti on a really inspiring discussion. I think there's a lot that we could take away from there. And to say that the United Nations itself, the aims and objectives are founded, you could say, on the principle of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is one family, and that the aim is to work together for the betterment of all humanity. So I think that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam will always remain relevant and a good source of inspiration for all of us here in our work at the United Nations. In Guyana, the Brahma Kumaris movement is very much present and a part of our spiritual landscape. So pleased to be here today for that, and to say that in many ways Guyana is a microcosm of the world, being a land, as we say, of 6 peoples, of different ethnicities and different religions, and we always strive to work together, as our president has recently launched what is called One Guyana, togetherness. And I think the discussion here in terms of how we can work together towards good, towards progress, and towards peace is a very valuable one. There is also very well known in Guyana a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Karma Newa Dakaraste Mathalesh Kanachana, action thy duty, reward not thy concern. And it is that we should serve selflessly. So just want to express appreciation for being here today and for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I'll ask the ambassador and Sister Jayanti, if at any point you wish to interject, please do let me know, but I won't bother you in each intervention. So,
Thank you. I agree absolutely that when we're thinking about human values and trying to do the best that we can, it's anchored in the source, the divine being. And so mother, father, whatever term it is we use, but the source of all power and love and peace and truth lies there. And so it's through our connection that we can nurture all these qualities within ourselves also. So Ambassador, thank you for raising that. And yes, Guyana has a special place in my heart, and I believe we have a few people here from that country also. So thank you for being here.
No, I just wanted to say I agree 100% with what all of you have said. And I was very delighted to get that reference of Ubuntu. I am because you are. And the good news is that it's not just India, but many, many countries that echo similar sentiments, that we are all connected and that we must all extend a helping hand based off goodness and virtuosity.
thank you. Please, madam.
My name is Michelle Schimmel. I am a student of the Brahma Kumaris, and I am delighted. I am from New York. I'm delighted to be here, and I think there's always a reason why I'm here. I have a very naive and simple question, and it starts back. I used to serve in government. I was an elected official in state government, but now I'm more in an international realm, and I'm delighted to share with you. I have a very foolish question, perhaps. Is there an ambassador of peace? I had lobbied in the actually in our national government for a secretary of peace, and I'm not the only one who's done that. And when I spoke to a number of people in the Senate, they were most averse to it. I was shocked. I mean, actually, one senator actually yelled at me and said, "That's ridiculous. What do we need that for? We have a Secretary of State." And I pushed back a little bit. But the funny thing is, after the meeting was over, everyone came to me and shook their head and said, "You're right, you're right." I had another instance where I was in Turkey many years ago, and I had the privilege of sitting next to the Deputy Prime Minister. And I said, "Would you think less of the United States if we had a Secretary of Peace?" He says, "Quite the contrary. I would think more of the United States, that they had the courage to say, we have a Secretary of Peace before we send the Secretary of State." So my question is, and this comes from absolute ignorance, is there an ambassador of peace besides the Spirit? I think he is, God is, but is there one, and is there a way to convey language in a simple signpost of advancing that in the United Nations, that if you are a Secretary of Peace or a ambassador of peace, everyone knows what peace is. That is something that is not ineffable. It is experienced. But is that too simple to say that people in the UN can be ambassadors? That would be their title if they so choose. It changes the dialogue when you meet with a ambassador of peace, as opposed to, and you'll forgive me with all due respect, an ambassador. I'd rather sit with an ambassador of peace. So that's, is that a foolish question? It might be.
No, not at all. I don't think it's a foolish question, and I really liked your intervention. What I will say is that while there is nothing like that, at least not to my knowledge, I think there are many, many advocates of peace who are trying to instill a sense of peace all around. For instance, as a country that strongly believes in peace and harmony and well-being and prosperity, India has been advocating for peace. But the question is, and here is a question for you, is anyone listening? For peace, for us to have an ambassador of peace, though we don't have any such title, but there are many, many advocates of peace, many, many wise people, men and women who are advocating for peace, including from my country. But who is listening? We also need people to listen to that message, people who are exhorting for peace, people who are calling for peace, people who are pointing to the futility of war, people who are talking to the futility of conflict. But you have to have people who are also willing to listen.
Thanks, Pastor. In fact, I think that each and every one of us can be an ambassador of peace. We don't need to get a specific label or title, but that will then be expressed through the way we think, our attitude, our perception, what we say, what we do in our life. And so we could each one of us be ambassadors of peace, most definitely.
I'd just like to recall something that one of our former Secretaries General U Thant had said. And going by his words, we actually have 193 ambassadors of peace right now, including Ambassador Kamboj. He was asked, why are ambassadors to the UN called permanent representatives and not ambassadors? And he said, well, ambassadors represent a government at a particular point in time. The complexion of the government may change, and the point of view put forward, the ambassador changes. A permanent representative is a representative of something that is permanent and enduring for the United Nations. And he went on to say the idea of peace. So I'm not sure how etymologically correct that was or historically correct, but that was one point of view, so that might answer your question. Thank you. Please, sir, did you? Yeah.
I'm Jayanti.
Please.
My name is Archbishop Kennedy, and I'm the presiding prelate for the New Covenant Church of the Holy Spirit Evangelical Liturgical Ethiopian Orthodox. And I thank Patriarch Reed and Reverend Mother Mawat for attending, and more especially to Sister Jayanti and the seniors at BK, and my divine beloved sister, Sister Indra Lal, who I've known for over 20 years and have walked with Brahma Kumaris for over 2 decades, because there's a commonality of light. I wholeheartedly agree that we must be neighbors, family members. But one thing that always comes up or crops up within the dynamic of the family, especially, unfortunately, spiritual concerns. One of my favorite quotes is from the Honorable Mahatma Gandhi. He was speaking to a bunch of missionaries one day, and he said, "I love your Christ, but I don't like you Christians." And when I looked at that, I meditated upon it. In the Hebrew, Selah, which means to meditate. And I saw that there was such a separation between the root and the followers, and how sometimes, speaking in the essence of Christianity, how Christians have moved far away from the image of our Lord and Savior, Yeshua, Jesus the Christ. But in the family dynamic, there must be a level of leadership. And this is the thing that challenges us sometimes as a world family, because we know in the construct of a home, there's a mother, a father, a mother, there is some force, some voice that leads that home. So I think and I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, not an antagonist of it at all, actually a protagonist. How do we, as human beings, transcend our own humanity to sacrifice our own humanity for the sake of the larger whole? And I think sometimes that's the question that, or the issue that dogs us, because it's inbred in our atomic and subatomic structure. And so it definitely takes a level of transcendence to see beyond our humanity as who will be in charge, either socioeconomically, culturally, religiously. It cuts across the board. No one wants to say it, but those are the things that dog. Who will be in charge of the global family? Who will lead us? Of course we can say the divine, but moving to a more sense of terra firma, that's, I personally believe, the issue that we have issues with.
Thank you. Yes. Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Fabian O'Donnell, I'm the DPR of Embassy of Argentina. Our ambassador would have liked to be here, but due to some other point of the agenda, she couldn't be here. But I would like to share with you some of the concepts that our President Alberto Fernandez, shared with the authorities of India when this initiative of the presidency of the G20 was launched last year. Let me share with you some of the most important concepts said there. The planet is menaced by different menaces that we need to have answers to those who still need this basic needs filled, and in a planet that's consuming much more resources that are generated at this moment. And to face these emergencies, we need the reconstruction of constructive relation between the state, societies, and the awareness of the individuals. It's necessary also to build a big and consensus in questions like the collapse of the environment, the biodiversity, and the pollution of our world. And this requires a very active society working all together in different aspects. We strongly support the vision of the India to impulse the changes based in conducts and values, and because they are going to generate, because they need to generate powerful signals that have to reach to individuals, industries, and civil society to invest in new concepts, new ideas, new industries, innovations, to be respectful of the environment and also to the human nature. But let me take also for us, and this is a message I'm going to send to our capital, because we think it's extremely powerful when the ambassador said, I believe in goodness, and goodness is a religion. This is something that should be repeatedly on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. Please.
I was just going to comment to the Archbishop. Something that comes up in one of the sacred texts, the Gita in India, and it's one of the foremost teachings that most people from that subcontinent accept. And it talks about the communion with the divine only being possible when I'm ready to transcend the consciousness of my physical body, but also the consciousness of physical religions, and in that state then, and physical relations, and in that state then I can merely connect in a state of yoga. And so what you're talking about, transcendence in that way, so that truly we can go beyond all these limitations and come to the awareness of oneness, is very important. But I don't have an answer to your other question as to who would be the leader. Or kind of role to do that.
Yes. Denise.
My name is Denise Stato, and I've been a UN staff member here in New York. Also, I'm a practicing attorney and a leader of many different kinds of communities. It's wonderful that we have this special meeting today. It's so intimate, and we could have this constructive dialogue. And I think it's such an important resource for the C20. And I am one of the international co-chairs for the Human Rights as Human Values working group that the C20 has promulgated. So I'm hoping that we can use this recording to send it to our working group members and to post it on our Facebook page so that we have that as well. The question that I have is really a question about the idea of member states and representatives and the secretariat people having more unity, feeling more of a sense of community and belonging, and really feeling that they're serving the greater good, the planet, our precious planet, the world, and everyone. When you talk about goodness, this is something that really springs in my heart. I'm a person of faith, but at the same time, I see there are so many people who say they're people of faith and don't embody these principles or these beliefs that our faith traditions hold. In the United Nations, we have people who have different faiths, people who have no faiths, people who are humanists, people who believe in the goodness, who have goodwill in their heart, and they take action to really make things better. If we look at the Golden Rule and we see that beautiful, mosaic there, how can we really create more sense of unity, a sense of purpose or a shared purpose? Can we do something from a practical standpoint to help people in the UN system, give them more resources? Aside from the Brahma Kumaris, so many people have been trying to reach out, to offer different ways to do that. Are there any ways that we can do that, especially because India has promoted the International Day of Yoga and those underlying principles of yoga and the importance of discernment in decision-making? This is where I feel that there's such a huge connection. If we're making decisions and we're affecting the world, how can we really bring this out from using these wisdom that the sages have given us? That's really my concern and my question and the way I'd like to see things moving forward. Thank you.
Well, I think that is so brilliantly articulated and stated. And in an ideal world, that should happen. That really should happen. What I will say is that perhaps you need more people and more advocates speaking for all of this. What India is doing, and you will forgive me if I say what India is doing, but we are doing that. As I said, these are not empty slogans. We are walking the talk. When COVID broke out, we had the heart, and forgive me if I'm saying so myself, we had the heart. the large-heartedness, to look beyond ourselves, to look at the misery and suffering of others, to feel that if the larger countries who were able do not reach out and extend a helping hand, who is there for the smaller countries? That is just one tiny example. I've given many others, and this is not the time and place to do that. So I think we need more people and more advocates. We need more numbers going for this kind of philosophy. And I think that's a wonderful question you've raised, a beautiful point, and I just hope those who are listening to us change, transform, reform.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please.
So how can we envision, present myself first, I'm Miriam, I'm from Brazil. Not going to say an organization because I bring many other organizations with me, it wouldn't be fair. But how can we envision this one world humanity so that we can walk towards the creation of it? We are one, so how can we be more aware so that we do our inner work, commit with the values, but also I love like the ambassador for peace. I really believe in that because I believe that sometimes power is put so much in one person, and that makes us forget sometimes. And when you say, is anyone listening, like let's do the good, I believe that peace is not the opposite of war, and we need to understand peace first, even that it's within us, so that we can build it. So country titles, sometimes they take out our humanity, and beyond titles we are humans, and sometimes we forget about it. So how can we see more each other beyond our titles, and so that we can support each other to be who they are and to thrive? How could we commit to flourish the goodness, the love, the humans, the dreams? And if we don't have a person, if we don't have an answer, how can we envision and address what is needed so we can get there?
I believe that anybody who starts experiencing the light within and starts experiencing the light and the peace and the joy wants to share it with everybody. And so I think it's working on that level in a very organic way. And so each one of us sharing this with our family, with our community, with the people we work with, it can bring a difference. And I think that that is how we're moving ahead and coming to that point.
Thank you. Thank you. Denise, Kripa Devi.
Thank you. My name is Denise Little. Kripa Devi is my yoga name. I am grateful to be here. It's a beautiful dialogue. I represent Sri Swami Madhavananda World Peace Council at the UN. And I would like just to say that I really believe that change is happening, and I am an example of that. And India plays a huge role in this. I'm originally from Croatia, and I'm a yoga practitioner. And I met an Indian guru who came to live in Vienna in the 70s, His Holiness Swami Vishwaguru Maheshwarananda. So he really spread yoga in mid-Europe and Eastern Europe. And so the change is happening. And Indian teachers of yoga and Advaita Vedanta who came to West, to Europe and to this country really paved the path to that. And there are a lot of people practicing yoga, as you know, all over the world. So I'm optimistic. And also I would like to underline this yoga, this principle of transmitting yoga through guru lineages, which is very specific, and which I mean that is why yoga still today is relevant, because it was passed from one enlightened person to a person. So it takes, light in the heart to enlighten another heart. So I'm very grateful for this conversation and for the ambassador listening to us and Sister Jayanti. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Nice. My name is Danilo Parmigiani. I'm originally from Brazil too. Nice to see a colleague here. I represent the Legion of Kuduyo. It's a Brazilian civil society organization that is dedicated to promoting ecumenical spirituality through the expression of doing good and charity to serve, those who are the most in need. And we also see ourselves Brazilians, like Brazil, as a very similar country with India, because of the fact that despite we are a very large Christian country, we have a sense of ecumenical spirituality that is very strong in our hearts. And we also understand about the importance of really expressing this spirituality as something that is universal, directly into something that is practical, to really change and bring relief to the very basic needs of the entire world. And what we see here at the United Nations is also some sort of gap that we also see in many of our countries as well, which is the luminous field of ethics, where we all understand the importance of these universal values and spirituality that unites us all, and then having this translated into practical things where we will see that those values being acted upon in coherence with what we believe. So my question to you, and I have also the pleasure to share the leadership of the NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values and Global Concerns here at the United Nations with Sister Sabita. We want to say that we have a lot of good advocates. We have a lot of great examples, not just in the civil society, but also when we are in connection with the missions. We see a lot of people from different government representatives becoming and showing themselves as beacons of lights of all these important values. But we don't see this coming into a kind of concrete sequence of actions that will help the United Nations to really become united, because these are the very core principles that formed the organism back like 70-something years ago. But we see that this very essential principle, which is unity, which is the very large principle that united us all here, it's what we are lacking to really see some actions translated into protecting the environment, into securing the peace in the world, into really bringing dignity to the human beings in the entire world. So we're missing that sense of unity. Despite of not having yet systems that will incentivize these spiritual principles into practice, and that we all see many advocates, but we do not see them coherently working together and forming the necessary coalitions to, for example, see in one of the Sustainable Development Goals at least one that says about the spiritual development of the entire country, and also about bringing about peace into a mandatory sort of approach to the social policies that we need to form here. What is the kind of system that is missing to link this realm of ethics into the reality? I believe that's the kind of question that we are raising in different ways in this room.
This is really a tough question and something that you yourself articulated, and I think Sister Jayanti is best placed to take this one, because why is it? No, it's a very good question. That why, despite knowing that there should be more goodness and purpose and unity and peace, this is not transcending into action on the ground. Why is this not happening? It should happen. Absolutely, it should happen. There should be more of unity, harmony, peace. Certainly, I can only speak for my country. Certainly, I do feel from the perspective that I look at that my country is doing everything possible for peace, growth, harmony, positivity, and development through advocacy and by also walking the talk. But I agree that we should all be doing that. Sister Jayanti, could you enlighten us?
Thank you for your response, Ambassador. I think that although individually we think about these things, yet we don't often come together to speak about spiritual values and spirituality as a whole, because these are not words that really are used in the vocabulary of the UN so often. So spirituality is very rarely used, but even words like love, it's not a word that's often used. But I think that in people who do believe in these things support each other, then I think that the unity of those people themselves can allow the power of that to grow and expand further, so that it is translated into action also. So on the one side is my own spiritual discipline that I follow, but when I connect with you and with others, then it means that that energy is multiplied and it's expanded and it can reach out further. So I think that we're in the process and it'll happen. I'm very hopeful that it'll happen very soon.
We need more voices apart from India.
Mrs. Guha, please.
Yes, I'm Smita Guha. I'm a professor at St. John's University in the Teacher Education Department. I'm so honored to be part of this conversation, and I definitely agree with peace, harmony, unity. But I was thinking, as a teacher educator, we also need to inspire children. And what are we doing in terms of schools and how to inspire, how to instill that and ignite that fire among children? Is United Nations going to, and Brahma Kumaris going to take an active role in that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And certainly, if you wish to be forward-looking, you have to look at the youth and instill the right values, the very values that we are all talking about in this room. And certainly, yes, I think the United Nations education is a topic that comes up. It is also a goal. And individually, nations are looking to their own systems to see that, youth carry the ideals and value system forward. Again, I mean, you'll forgive me, I'll give you the Indian example. We have a new education policy which invests more of an effort into the country's value system. These very ideals that we are talking about, peace, unity, harmony, development, goodness. So I think a lot is also left to the individual countries to invest in their youth and to ensure that that energy is directed purposefully in the right direction. So I would say the answer to the question is yes. It has to be given an individual direction by the countries themselves, and eventually it must come from within the individual. Because in a sense, we should all be awakened at some stage and know the right from the wrong, see the light.
I think it was around 1996, and Sister Gayatri would remember the precise year, but we worked on a program, a book that actually Sister Gayatri was one of the main coordinators and authors of that, and it was called Living Values, and it was that concept of values being lived, but values that are alive. And as a result of that book being used in Spain by UNICEF and Brahma Kumari educators, UNICEF then invited us to a meeting at the UN headquarters and asked us to bring together 12 educators from across the world, which we did. And that program of Living Values then reached out across the world. And at a certain point, we could see that the power of values was beyond just one organization. So that Jayanti at that time decided that it would be a gift to the world and not just held by the Brahma Kumaris. And so that program is still working, and it's called ALIVE, the Association of Living Values Education Worldwide. And so that's happening. And another initiative that we took in India specifically was an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, in particular with Annamalai University in South India. And that's now expanded to reach many other universities across India also, in which we were working with the university, presenting spiritual concepts and ideas and working with them for values. And there's now the BA that's been in existence in values for, I think, about 20 years. But also there's now a PhD curriculum that's being offered, and that's been in progress. And so everybody, I think, has now understood that where you, for a long time, associated religion with values and then said you need to have a secular type of education, which is fine, But just making it secular means that you're cutting out the roots of values. And so together with a secular education, what is needed is specific concepts of values being introduced in education. And so it's happening in different ways.
No, I think that is a beautiful point that Sister Jayanti has raised, specific values being inculcated in our education system. Like, this is my personal belief, I'm speaking in my personal capacity, that education is fantastic. Every country is looking after quality education for boys and girls, but some things must also be taught, I feel. For example, resilience. For example, even goodness. I mean, you might laugh at this. These are very basic things that should also be taught. How to take hardships in your stride. I mean, I don't know how many classrooms teach this, because life, as we know, is full of ups and downs. I mean, there'll be the good times and you'll coast along, but there will be bad times. You may not get what you want. You will be disappointed. Resilience also should be taught to the youngsters, to the youth, your point. And of course, goodness, honesty, so on and so forth. So I do believe that over and above the formal education system, I think the individual unit, the family unit, must also play its role in raising better citizens for the future.
Thank you. We're fortunate to have a representative here from two civil society organizations, Childhood Educators International and the Committee for Teaching of the United Nations. So, Elizabeth Schumann, any thoughts on this?
Ambitions, what is taught in schools, it does not always align with what parents think. So that's a whole other idea to look into. And of course, we at Committee on Teaching about the United Nations, we feel it's so important that people who only read about the bumps in the Security Council know the breadth of our daily lives that the UN is involved in. And yes, there are 193 peace ambassadors, but of course we could have used 200 that inspired. So those are the, and I think they dovetail because education should include education about the UN and the values it stands for. Anybody who would like to get involved, speak to me.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Denise, you had a point, please.
I just want to plug Amrita University in India because that is just such an extraordinary, I think, university, and Alma's vision, to really integrate into the curriculum these everyday values that you are both speaking about today. So that's one plug. I am open to suggestions. I know Danilo and I are very open to suggestions. Please tell us what you think we can do as advocates to approach the UN. Is there a resolution? Is there a working group that can be started with some member state who would helm it? I think that we love the UN. We love the idea of trying to help as many people as we can and to take care of our planet. There are so many good people here who we've worked with for decades and decades, right? I mean, I've been doing this for over 25 years in the UN system. We do it because we love it. We're passionate about it. We want to make the difference. This is a place where we felt that we could serve. We are open. Please be in touch with us. Let us know what ideas you have that we can bring forth. I mean, we can do things, but we also appreciate your partnership and your advice and your knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Before I invite Sister Jayanti to lead us on a meditation, I'd like to ask Ambassador Kamboj and you, Sister, if you have any closing thoughts?
Well, thank you so much, Ramu. In closing thoughts, since I've said everything possible, I will only thank you, Sister Jayanti, the Brahma Kumaris, and this wonderful audience. I think it's been a very memorable morning. For me, a bit special because this is not what we normally do at the United Nations, even though we might agree that we should do more of this. And therefore, it was a morning and an afternoon with a difference. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope to see some of you at least more often. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a word of appreciation for yourself, Ambassador, and for you, Ramu, for getting us all together in this way. And if there's any one last comment I want to make, I hope that everyone just carries away this message of being an ambassador of peace and just carrying that light and allowing that light to shine.
Thank you, Sister. Now would you lead us?
Please carry on sitting comfortably. You don't have to sit on the floor or anything else. I'll just share a few thoughts and invite you to follow these ideas. Turning inwards, looking at my thoughts, just simply watching my thoughts slows down the speed. And in the spaces between the thoughts, in the silence within, there is peace. And I go deeper and deeper within myself and come to the awareness of my spiritual identity, of the light that I am, the peace that I am, and the goodness that I carry. And in this pure, elevated consciousness, it's very simple to connect with the source, the divine, the supreme being of light, who ignites the light within each one of us, the one who leads us from darkness into light, the one who holds us all together in the bond of love, the eternal bond of one family. And in this awareness of the parent and the family, the experience of love, truth, harmony, and joy becomes natural. This is our original state, the state of purity and goodness. And these vibrations reach out to bring the entire human family together. These vibrations reach all species on this planet, offering them safety and protection. These vibrations reach nature itself, the elements of matter, and restores order and harmony therein. And we move towards a world in which peace and love, truth and joy are a reality. I come back to the moment here and now, in the physical dimension, but now with a resolve to share these experiences through my vibrations, through my thoughts, my words, and my deeds. Om Shanti. Thank you.
I have the honor of singing a song that is written by India's national poet and Nobel laureate, Rabindranath Tagore. This song expresses appreciation for Universal Mother. Our world needs the blessing of Mother to be one family and one future. I'm going to sing this song in 2 languages. The original language, which is Bengali, one of the Indian language, and also the translation in English.
With a high hope, I have come up to you, hold out to your arms. Oh, Mother, don't you send me back. Boru asha kore eshechi go kache deke dao. Nobody likes to care for destitute. You will give refuge. I know, well, I know. Boru asha kore eshechi go kache deke dao. আর আমি যে কিছু চাহি রে চরণ তলে বসে থাকিব I have no other desire in me but to remain seated at your feet আর আমি যে চাহিনে জননী বলে শুধু ডাকিব তুমি না রাখিলে গৃহ আর পাইব কোথা কেঁদে কেঁদে কোথা বেড়াবো ওই যে ঘন ঘোরা গহন রজনী বড় আশা করে এসেছি গো কাছে ডেকে নাও I have no other desire in me but to remain seated at your feet আর আমি যে চাহিনে চরণ তলে বসে থাকিব I have no other craving in me but to call you oh mother dear unless sheltered by you where shall I go about weeping where shall I go about weeping behold pulled out to your arms. Oh, mother, don't you send me back with the high hope I have come up to you, pulled out to your arms. Oh, mother, don't you send me back, boru asha kori eshechi go kache deke lao.
Now, this has brought us to the close of today's conversation, and my heart is so full. I hope your heart is very full too. And I must say to our dear ambassador, we are going to advocate not only India. We said we need more advocates. I'm sure all of us, each one of you are leaving today with this conviction that we are going to advocate for a better world even more. So we stand by you. So with lots of love and gratitude, I say thank you to Ambassador and the entire permanent mission of India for accepting to come today and to share your wisdom with us. To Sister Jayanti, of course, our dear sister and mentor, and our spiritual mother, guide, for her wisdom also, her presence, and of course to Ramu for beautifully articulating this conversation and bringing out the best in both of them. And I'm sure we have more to hear, and we're going to be meeting with you more often. And none other but our representatives from the missions, special welcome. And also, thank you very much for coming out today and sharing also your thoughts on this subject. And of course, all our other friends, brothers and sisters, friends and colleagues, those who are present in the room and those who are online. Thank you very, very much for coming today. And I am sure you are leaving richer than you came in, smarter and wiser.